If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, "No thank you," then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea, don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes please, that's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they are unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, "But you wanted tea last week," or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea.
Hi everyone, how's it going? So many of you will have seen on the internet the "consent is as easy as tea" video. I myself got shown it in sixth form, some of you may have seen it in high school or college. And while it's a very good introduction to consent, it doesn't quite cover everything. So welcome to Consent, It's Not As Easy As Tea, where we're going to delve into consent a little bit deeper. First, let's recap what we see in the tea video. If someone says yes, then that is consent. If someone says that they aren't sure, that's not a clear yes, so do not force them and wait for them to decide firmly yes or no. If someone says no, then that means no. Don't get annoyed at them and don't force them. If someone says yes at first, but then changes their mind, then that is not consent. People are allowed to change their minds. If someone is unconscious, then they cannot consent. If they say yes while they were conscious and then they pass out, then consent is no longer valid. If they say yes, then pass out during the act, consent is no longer there, so stop and make sure that they are okay. And just because they said yes one time, that does not mean you have consent for any other time. You must get consent every time. So this is a solid starting point, but it doesn't quite go into the more complex stuff, and it also isn't necessarily right. So let's look a bit deeper into yes being consent, because, fun fact, a yes isn't always a yes. If any kind of physical, emotional, or psychological pressure, abuse, or force is used to coerce someone to have sex, then that person being coerced has lost their freedom of choice, and so they cannot truly consent. Often in these situations, an individual will say yes, but that's out of fear for any potential consequences that they could face if they say no, and unfortunately this is seen a lot in abusive relationships. It is actually a myth that you cannot be sexually abused in a relationship, and abusers will often use the excuse, "Oh, but you said yes," to defend their actions. To put it simply, coercion is not consent. As well as freedom to make the choice, we also have the capacity to make the choice. This is partly covered in the tea video because unconscious people do not want tea. But there are a few other situations where this applies as well. If someone is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, then they may not have the sufficient capacity to consent. If the individual is under the age of 16, then by law, they cannot consent. And if the individual may struggle to communicate due to a form of disability, then they may not be in a position to consent. The important things to remember are: you get the final say over what happens to your body. You are entitled to stop or change your mind. It doesn't matter what you are wearing, what you've had to drink, where you are, what your sexuality is, what your gender is. None of these things change the fact that no means no. Nobody is entitled to your body. Nobody has the right to do things to your body without consent. You decide your boundaries, you decide what you are comfortable with, and you choose whether you consent or not, nobody else. To help remember the rules of consent, think about FRIES. Consent should be freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. Freely given, meaning no coercion of any form is used. Reversible, meaning that consent can be taken back at any point. Informed, meaning that you can only consent if you know the full story. For example, if you consent to sex with a condom, but then the other person takes it off, then that's not full consent. Enthusiastic, meaning you only do the things that you actually want to do, not the things you feel you are expected to do. So if you want to have sex, but you don't want to go down on someone, that is perfectly valid. And specific, because a yes to foreplay on a Thursday is not a yes to sex on the following Monday. Saying yes to one thing doesn't mean you've said yes to other things. Remember to set boundaries, remember FRIES, and remember that you are in control of your body. If you are affected by this video, or if you are a survivor of abuse, follow the links below to get support. Thank you for watching.
Emmett, I microwaved a pizza. Want to come down for a slice?
No thanks, Mom.
You okay, bud? You sound a little weird.
Yes, I'm fine.
Grape soda?
Mom! Hello?
Thanks for texting the sexual assault hotline. My name's Jordan. Is there a name I can use for you? It doesn't have to be your real name.
How about Matt?
Cool. Glad you texted, Matt. What's up?
I don't know. Probably nothing.
Something on your mind?
Well, my swim coach keeps having me stay after practice, and he said it'll help me make first squad. Yesterday, he showed me some different stretches, and then he touched me. Down there.
I'm so glad you reached out, Matt. That really took a lot of courage, and I think I can help.
Okay.
What your coach did is called sexual abuse, and it is not your fault. Sexual abuse is when someone does something sexual to another person without that person's consent. It's not only wrong, it's against the law.
Okay, but I'm a guy. This isn't supposed to happen to me.
Actually, sexual abuse can happen to anyone, of any gender. In fact, 1 in 6 guys are sexually abused before they turn 18, so you're not alone.
Wow, I didn't know it was so common. But it's still really hard to talk about. I feel so stupid.
I know it's tough, but please don't feel stupid. You did nothing wrong. And you know what? A lot of people feel too scared or ashamed to talk about it at all. And keeping a secret like that can cause a lot of pain. You showed real strength when you reached out.
The other thing bothering me is I'm straight, or at least I was. Does what he did mean I'm gay now?
Sexual abuse has nothing to do with sexual orientation. If you're straight, you're still straight, even though this was done by another guy, even if your body responded in any way.
Okay, but what do I do now?
Contacting us was a great first step. There are other organizations that can help too, and they'll keep your conversations confidential. But first, you might want to talk with an adult you trust so they can get you some additional support. Do you have someone like that?
Yeah, I think I can talk to my mom.
That's great. Just remember that what happened to you was not your fault, that you did nothing wrong, that this is more common than people think, and you are not alone.
Thanks. I'm gonna get going. Hey, Mom?
You texted?
Can I talk to you about something?
If you or someone you know needs help, please talk to a trusted adult or service organization. You can also visit oneinsix.org to chat with a trained advocate 24/7 or join a weekly chat-based support group.
You just divide the distance by the time and... Kevin? Is that you?
I'm too bummed out to go to period 4 physics. You guys, go on without me.
What happened?
Last night, I ran to the TV like I do every Tuesday to watch Commander Xander and her amazing adventures across the cosmic pathways of yesterwear. But I must have gotten the channel wrong, because instead of a pulse-pounding hybrid of science fiction and high fantasy, it was a documentary on sex trafficking. I could only watch 5 minutes before I ended up like this.
We actually just learned about trafficking in health class, Kevin. And I think if you'd watch the whole documentary, you might feel less disturbed and more empowered. Learning the facts helped me a lot. And I think it'll help you too. Also, while this information can be difficult to process, it's important to remember that it could be happening to someone you know. We should focus on supporting survivors.
To be honest, I don't really even understand what trafficking is.
Basically, sex trafficking happens when one person causes another to take part in sexual behaviors in order to gain something of value, whether it's money, food, or a place to stay, clothing, drugs, a job, or even a ride to school. Anyone could be a trafficker, even someone the victim knows or trusts, like a family member or someone who acts friendly or romantic. And sometimes the victim might not feel like they are being forced or manipulated, or even realize that they are being trafficked. This process is known as grooming. The trafficker could promise love, a romantic relationship, or safety in an attempt to build trust with the victim. The trafficker might lie to, manipulate, or threaten the victim. Examples of lies include telling the victim that they'll get in trouble for taking part in sexual behaviors. Manipulation can include gifts or providing protection. Or threats of harm could be made against the victim or their family.
No matter what the situation, the most important things to remember are that sex trafficking is always illegal. And especially that it's never the fault of the victim.
But something like that could never happen here, right?
Actually, it's more common than you think, and anyone can be trafficked. It happens to people of all genders, races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, and age groups, from big cities to suburbs, in the United States and across the world. It does a lot of damage to whoever it happens to, even after the trafficking stops.
Is there anything I can do about it?
The first thing is to know what adults you can trust to talk to if you think someone you know might put you or other people in a dangerous situation.
And to help others, you can keep an eye out for signs that something might be wrong, like injuries that don't make sense, being gone from school a lot, keeping to themselves, or seeming more tired than usual. Of course, people could show these signs for a ton of reasons other than sex trafficking, and individual reactions to trafficking can look very different. But if something doesn't feel right, or you are worried, it's okay to check in with them, or a trusted adult, just in case something's wrong, no matter what it is.
Thanks, guys. I feel a lot better now, and more prepared to help other people. Just like Commander Xander herself! Speaking of which, can I count you guys in for Commander XanderCon next weekend? We can cosplay as the entire bridge crew, and go to the Yesterwear Geography panel, and get pizza in the food court, and try to find an original copy of the Series 1 SS Yesterbolt with pop-off starboard engines, and...
To learn more about sex trafficking or get help, talk to a trusted adult. You can also contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. Text help or info to 233-733 or visit humantraffickinghotline.org.